Hey guys, back again, Chris here. Before I get started, I don't know if any of you guys have ever watched the TV show Game of Thrones, because in that show, guys that aren't careful can be standing there 1 minute and the next minute, you know, some dragon comes along and snatches them off the ground and carries them away and has a meal. Well, here in the Chesapeake Bay Watershed, we have these things called deerflies, and if I suddenly disappear out of frame and you hear me screaming off in the distance, deerflies. I've had a lot of people ask me in the comments about my ROPS lights, and so I thought I'd do a video about them. This is not a how-to video. There's lots of good ones out there, but I thought maybe I would give some specific information about this particular tractor, the Kubota LX2610, the ROPS model. If you have a cab, then obviously it's different. They have lights mounted in the cab, and there's some differences there. Also, this would not necessarily, or some of this would not pertain to the LX3310 either, because where I place my switches, you couldn't do that on the 3310 because those blanks are taken up with actual switches for the regen. So let's talk about what I did. For me, when I installed these lights, I had a few criteria. One, I wanted them to look as close to factory as I could make them look without being ridiculous. Two, I wanted to make as few alterations to the tractor as possible. So drill as few holes, make as many changes, as few changes as I possibly could. And I was able to do that. I don't think I had to drill any holes in the tractor, and that's including the ROPS. A little aside, if you find a video out there where somebody has mounted ROPS lights on their tractor and they have drilled a hole in their ROPS, you will see that they incur the wrath of YouTube. I'm not going to get into that a great deal. I don't know that it's as big a deal as people make it out to be, but I chose not to do it. There's one hole in the ROPS that I fed wires through, and you'll see that when I'm showing you that. But I decided that it would not be a good idea to drill in it, so I didn't. The lights that I ended up going with are these that I bought on Amazon. They're Nilight LED lights. The front-facing light is a combination flood and spotlight. It's 75 watts, and the two rear-facing lights are both 18-watt floodlights, and that's worked really well for me. Also, the set that I bought came with a wiring harness. I ended up not using that, and I'll talk about that too. I guess I should also add that obviously this is after the fact. I did not shoot a video when I installed these. This was done days after I got the tractor. I did take some still photographs, so when I go back and edit this video, I will try to intermix some of those still photos in so you can kind of see the innards of what I did, and hopefully that will be helpful as well. Okay guys, before we go any further, I thought I should talk about the wiring just a little bit. Down here at the bottom, you'll see the wire that comes in. This is the pigtail that comes under the rear fender for the auxiliary lights. And those wires flow up into this box right here. You'll see this represents a small enclosure that's mounted up under the back of the tractor, right under the toolbox. And in this enclosure, I've got both of my relays, and the wires are all kind of joined together inside this to be protected. And then coming out of there, these wires run up to the switches. 4 wires run to the switches. They're 20 gauge wires. I think I actually said 18 in the video. I was mistaken. I've got a power and a ground that powers both switches. And then the blue wire and the white wire each carry power back to the relays. So when the switch is on, these wires are engaged. When that happens, it allows the power to flow through the relay and then up to the lights. In this case, this relay is going to power the front light, and this relay here will power the 2 rear lights. So there are 3 wires that run up to the lights from this box. They are the wires that run up through the ROPS, a hot wire for the rear lights and a hot wire for the front light, and then a single ground. I'm not an electrician, and so I'm not telling you need to do it this way, but this seems to work so far, and it seems pretty clean. So there you go. So guys, as you can see, I ended up mounting the ROPS light switches right here. Initially, these were just blanks, made to accommodate two switches just like this one for the LX2610. That's where the regen switches go. That's where I eventually went. What I initially thought that I was going to do is put the switch, both switches right here. This is where the light switch is mounted on the cab model of this tractor. And I thought, well, that's going to make perfect sense. I'm just going to attach my switches here. I think I have a picture I can insert that shows what that switch looks like. And I thought I could fit two of those right here. And again, as I think I said, I wanted this to look as factory as possible, and I thought that would be perfect. By the way, the Kubota light switches are about $45 a piece, so I was not going to use those. And I found some suitable replacements on Amazon, but eventually they did not work. What I found out is that in this area right here, and I believe I have a still photo of that as well, behind this is an aluminum support bar that goes right where I would have wanted these switches to go. One of the other things I thought about when I was mounting the switches was that maybe I could put them down somewhere on this piece of plastic, this cowling. There's lots of room behind this cowling, but this thing is very, very thick. It's probably, it's got to be nearly a 1/4 inch thick. So any any switch you put in here, it's not usually made to mount on something that's that thick. Also, all of this is slightly curved, and I was a little concerned that I might drill a hole in this and then the switch wouldn't mount properly, and then I would be just out of luck because I'd have a big hole in this cowl, and knowing me, I'd have to go out and buy a new cowl. I do want to talk about these two openings right here a little. Most of the switches that I found were round. The light switch that comes with the light set is round, and these openings are I think the opening is actually physically square. As you can see, this switch is square, and I searched high and low trying to find a switch that would work in this square hole. Most of the round switches that I tried, and I ordered a variety of types to fit, most of them just didn't completely cover part of the opening. And the only thing I can think that maybe other people have done is drilled down through the little plug that's in here, but it would leave almost no material, and I didn't like the way that that was going to look. So I was very excited to stumble across these switches, and I'll leave a link to these in the description, because they've got this little square bezel cover, and they worked out just great. Alright guys, so let's take a look at the top of the ROPS and have a look at the lights. Here are the lights in their mounted position. I've got the front light. As I said, that's a 75 watt combination, spotlight and floodlights. It's adjustable up and down, and it is mounted along with the other lights to a piece of 2-inch by 1/2 inch U-channel steel that I just bought at Home Depot, so that I could run the wires and they'd be protected, and I could paint it, and so the color would pretty closely match the ROPS paint. Here you can see where the wires come out of the ROPS. That is a factory hole, and then down into the opening I just put in here for this cover. Here's the rear view. I've got two 18-watt floods pointing backwards. They're again mounted to this piece of U-channel right here, and that's held on by these two U-bolts. Actually, I couldn't find U-bolts that I thought fit well. They were either too long or too wide, so I just bought some, I believe this is 3/8 inch all thread, and I just heated it and bent it so that it fit perfectly. And the support piece here was just some 1 inch, or actually maybe 3/4 inch steel that I had laying around, drilled it out, and these are some locking nuts that I've got on here. Got two of those. The lights then screw right up into the U-channel, and the ground is attached on the inside to there. Alright guys, when it comes to power, you can do this more than one way. You can wire the switch with the harness that comes with the lights and wire it straight to the battery, so you have unswitched power. It's direct to the battery, and you can turn those lights on anytime you want. Also, behind the rear fender, there is a little pigtail that Kubota includes already in the tractor. And when you turn the key ignition on, that goes hot, and that's for auxiliary lights. So you can just turn the key on and those auxiliary lights come on right away. I didn't want that. In fact, I wanted specifically separate switches for the front and rear lights. I wanted to be able to have the option to turn one or the other on or off. So that's how I went. I ended up not using the wiring harness that came with the lights. I made my own, mainly because it really didn't fit perfectly with my application, and mainly because, as I said, I wanted 2 light switches and the pre-made harness is set up for 1. So I used 2 different types of wire. I used 14 gauge tinned copper wire and 18 gauge tinned copper wire. The smaller wire, the 18 gauge, goes to the switches. The larger wire goes from the relays up to the lights and actually carries the bulk of the power. The pigtail back here under the fender is fused at 15 amps. I've got 75 and 2 times 18, so that's 111 watts. So you do the math, that comes out to just over 9 amps. So even if you account for a surge when you turn them off and on, I felt like that's going to give me enough backup. And I'm probably not turning them on at the exact same time, so to me that seemed okay. Anywhere where I was joining wires, whenever possible, I tried to use heat shrink solder connectors, and I also used a lot of just regular heat shrink as well. Everything, all the wiring as it runs under and around and through the tractor is in 3/8 inch split wire loom protector, the little corrugated stuff you can buy. And also, when I had long runs of wire, I took little sections of heat shrink tube, like 3/8 inch heat shrink, and every foot or 18 inches, I shrunk that down on the wire. So it's in a tight bundle throughout the tractor. Now I'm going to show you back here where the wires run. So here you see a bundle of wires. A lot of this is factory stuff. Although, let's see, this wire here, this bundle is what runs up to the switches. That comes back and it joins these wires and comes up into this box right here. And inside that box is where the wires are spliced together and where the 2 relays for the lights are. This wire is actually the part of the pigtail that supplies the power. And this wire right here, this is engulfed in 3/8 inch heat shrink tubing from up here and all the way down. And that wire, I don't know if you can see this, comes all the way down here and comes under the ROPS and then up into the arm of the ROPS. And then it travels up through there and up to the lights. So guys, those are my ROPS lights. I hope you found this information helpful. I'll try to leave links to all the stuff that I used and maybe even some of the stuff that I tried and didn't use in the description below this video. If you have any questions, or if you did yours differently, or you think I could have done something better, also feel free to drop those comments below as well. I've really enjoyed the interaction in my previous videos, so I'd like to keep that up. At this point now, we're just going to sit around and wait for it to get dark, and I don't know what the camera can pick up, but we'll see what the ROPS lights do in the dark. Okay guys, here we go. These are the headlights. These are LED bulbs, by the way. I've already changed out the factory incandescent. And let's see. There's the LEDs. I have no idea what the camera is actually picking up, but it's a pretty astounding difference. And just the ROPS lights. Now I'll add the headlights. Yeah, not much change there. Off, on, off, on. Okay guys, here's the rear lights. These lights point more towards the ground so I can see the implement behind me. See if I can get that. You can see, I can see everything I need to right there. But that does point a fair ways back up the road as well. Appreciate you sticking around, and maybe we'll catch you next time. Oh my God, it's a deerfly!